The Union Cabinet has approved the plan to have One Nation, One Poll, which is a pet initiative of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We are now learning that the bill for One Nation, One Poll will be introduced in Parliament next week, and subsequently it will be referred to a joint parliamentary committee. Now, there is a sound economic rationale for why India should have one election. Every 6 months in this country, you have an assembly election or you have a general election. The point is, there is massive costs to the exchequer. This is unsaid, both man-hour costs and total costs that go into holding these elections. So, it'll be a massive cost saving to the exchequer. In fact, the last election, the 2024 election, by some unofficial estimates, was to the tune of 5,000 crore rupees. We could save all of that if instead of having multiple elections in a year, you have just one election. That's the contention of the ruling party, the BJP. The opposition, though, says this is undemocratic, this is anti-federal. At the end of the day, we are a federal polity. There are 29 states. Each state has its own issues, has its own politics, has its own dynamics, and therefore the people of each of these states have a right to choose who they want as their representatives, both at the local level and at the national level, independent of each other. That's the case against One Nation, One Election. But of course, there is the case to be made as well that from 1952, when we had our first general election, all the way up to 1967, we had for 15 years One Nation, One Election. Simultaneous elections both for the Lok Sabha and for state assemblies. So if we could do it in the first years after independence, why can't we do it 70 years on? Has the time come for One Nation, One Election?
तो इसीलिए प्रधानमंत्री जी चाहते हैं वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन हो। हम लोग इसको पूरा समर्थन करता हूं।
It will work as a game changer. कम से कम 1 से 1.5% जो है ऑटोमेटिकली इस देश की जीडीपी बढ़ जाएगी।
हम बिल आने का इंतजार करेंगे कि किस तरीके से वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन लागू होगा। तो ये एक लंबी प्रक्रिया है।
ये बहानेबाजी है कि आप कह रहे हैं कि एक साथ चुनाव कराने से खर्चे कम आएंगे। क्या वोटर्स की संख्या कम हो जाएगी एक साथ चुनाव कराने से? क्या ईवीएम की संख्या कम हो जाएगी?
All right, so is India ready for One Nation, One Poll? Many arguments and two different sides to this debate. One saying that yes, India is ready. There is an economic rationale, there's a political rationale, there's a national security rationale, and one side saying no, India is not ready, principally saying that in a federal polity like ours, One Nation, One Poll would be anti-federal. RP Singh, national spokesperson of the BJP, joining us. Mohan Kumar Mangalam, spokesperson of the Congress Party. Tariq Khan, spokesperson of the Samajwadi Party, and will also be joined in a moment by Professor Sanjay Kumar, co-founder with CSDS and one of India's foremost psephologists. Mohan Kumar Mangalam, let me start with you. Let's start with the economic rationale. And these are numbers. In 1999, more than 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the cost of conducting the general election in 1999 was 947 crores at an electorate of about 61 crores. 5 years later, in 2004, when the UPA came to power, for the very first time, officially, the figures went in excess of 1,000 crores to conduct the general election at an electorate of 67 crores. 10 years later, in 2014, when Mr. Modi came to power, the cost was 3,870 crores at 83 crore electorate. And in 2024, the last general election, it was over 5,000 crores with a 97 crore electorate. There is a sound economic rationale for why we should have just one nation, one election.
Zakka, I mean, taking the denominator as the electorate isn't particularly accurate because you do have inflation. Every year expenses go up. And frankly, the expenses for parliament, as listed in the report that was released, is less than 0.02% of the union budget. State elections come out of the state budget, and I think the ratio is likely the same. And costs aside, economic rationale aside, honestly, first of all, I just have to say this because I think this is yet again we're debating one nation, one election when we know that the two-thirds constitutional majority or majority in parliament that's required to pass the constitutional amendment is not existing for the government. This is yet another diversion, given all the issues that need to be talked about in electoral reform, frankly. This is one electoral reform that is neither feasible nor desirable. What is going to happen to the parties that are going to election in, let's say, another couple of years? They're going to only stand, like, let's say, my state goes in 26. Is it only going to have a term of 3 years? So if one nation, one election kickstarts in 29, how is that fair? And how is that, even when you're talking about an election where you have a national election and a state election at the same time, it is extremely unfair to the smaller regional parties in those states that really find they've lost their voice. Many of the local issues disappear in an election when both are happening simultaneously. So this is not only anti-federal, it's also anti-democratic. Many of the reasons that were given in the panel were facetious. They said welfare schemes would be stopped. Of course, it's not stopped. In fact, even critical disbursements happen during elections if the election commission allows it. And the oldest democracy in the world, if you want to benchmark against them, they have separate elections as well. They have federal and state elections happening at different times. So where is this great sort of realization that's come into the government that this is the sort of master stroke that will change our electoral
respond
fortunes?
to that. One nation, one election is an impractical idea. It's an anti-federal idea. It's anti-regional parties. And this whole thing about costs, it's only 0.2% of the entire union budget of the government of India to conduct elections. Why are you so worried? Why are you so worried about costs? RP Singh.
Zakka, sorry, my apologies. Zakka, it means till 1967 what used to happen was wrong. 52 to 67 it happened in the country. All elections have, during that period, there was one election, whether assembly or the parliament. It's only because of the Congress party they started dissolving the state assemblies at the whims and fancies. Probably more than 90 state assemblies were dissolved by them during the Nehru and Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi regime. So thereafter, the complete cycle was broken. But the issue is other than that. The issue is they are just now Mr. Kumar Mangalam was challenging the intelligence of the voter. He says smaller parties won't get a chance. I mean, BJD used to win elections in the same polling booth where there's a separate machine for the assembly election and separate machine for the parliament election. People used to vote for Biju Janata Dal in assembly election, and whereas they used to vote for other parties in the parliament election. So was the case with Andhra Pradesh also. So how do you think, I mean, that voters can't distinguish or find a difference between the local parties and the national parties, and they can't distinguish between the two? Thirdly, what is the problem is that the progress of the work, the administration which works, that gets stalled. I mean, if there is some scheme which is on, you have to stall that. You complete work progress or every government administrative works which are on, they are halted because of the elections. And every now and then, and it's not the budget which you are just saying that was there for the election. I mean, the money which is spent is huge. I mean, all political parties spend huge money, and then that money goes, I mean, waste. I mean, instead of that, put that money to better use.
Okay.
It's not that the government money only. It's not the government money.
No, but the argument that the opposition is saying is, if you want to clean up politics, if you want to clean up electoral politics, why is there no bar on political parties spending for elections? There are bars on individual candidates. I don't know the exact amount. Professor Sanjay Kumar will know the exact amount for MP election and for MLA election. But there is no bar on political parties from spending. And if you need to clean up electoral politics, that should be your starting point, not one nation, one poll. But anyway, be that as it may, let me ask.
Can I make a small point?
Yeah.
There's a welcome suggestion, and let this be handled by election commission. That's very welcome. Let election commission take a call on it.
Yeah, Mohan wants to make a clarification. Then I want to go to Tariq Khan after that. Yeah, Tariq Khan and Professor Kumar.
Just one small clarification. The example of BJD does not hold true because BJD ruled that state, was a dominant party. I am referring to smaller parties, like for example, in my state, there is Patali Makkalkachi, there is Vidri Sittigal, there is Nam Tamlar. All these parties rarely participate to a large extent in parliament. They do participate, but they're, sort of almost sideshows in a Lok Sabha election. But in a state election, they are major factors, because most of their focus is local in the state. And that's what I mean when I say smaller parties actually get marginalized.
Okay, so let me ask Tariq Khan. Tariq Khan, so again, leave aside the high election costs, leave aside, it cost 5,000 crores to conduct the last general election. There is also, because of election after election, every 6 months we have an election, the discourse, the political discourse in the country becomes extremely polarizing. There are hate speeches that are made by members of different political parties. Also, the point that Mr. Singh was making about there are project delays that happen, investment flows become more stable if you have, and people know that there is a definitive timeline for every state assembly and for every parliament. Then people know once in 5 years you've had an election. The next 5 years, your job is to govern. Your job is to show the people that you can deliver. And if you don't, then vote those parties out. But here, every 6 months, because you have an election, the focus of those who have been elected to govern is also more on winning the next election rather than, actually governing. So that problem will get sorted, Tariq Khan, if we have just one election in 5 years.
I may agree with you, but slogans like "Batenge, Katenge" would not be there. Means if I agree with you, what you are saying, that these agenda of polarization and divisive politics will not be there. Means if you are saying that they will not bring all these agenda to the table, I'll agree with you. But unfortunately, the ultimate objective of Bharatiya Janata Party is to divide. Now, Kovind Saath said there would be a difference of 1.5% on the economy. I'm amazed. It will make difference on the growth rate or overall size of the GDP. Means I just need an economist to explain these two things. I'm very amazed. I want to know. I'm so excited that how it's going to. Means at the rate of 1.5%. Means what he's saying. He has to explain it on the floor of the table or in the house or somewhere else or anywhere else. Or BJP spokesperson should explain this, that 1.5% to a size of almost $4 trillion economy, India, which is about to become a $5 trillion economy, means you're saying that it will impact 1.5% or it will impact on at the rate of or whole size of the economy. Means what he's talking about. Means somebody please, we all need economists to explain these things. Now, simple point is this, that you can do that. You can do that. Go ahead. There would be required a lots of amendment. We have amendment, but we don't know what exactly they are putting on the table. What would be the means? I'm giving a proposal to Bharatiya Janata Party. Let's have one nation, one election. Dissolve the assemblies of BJP. First have a trial basis work. Dissolve the assemblies where NDA is ruling. Had a one nation, one election. That would be a very good
sir,
option.
वो कैसा suggestion है? मतलब there is a whole Kovind committee report which has given out a detailed timeline. सुनिए, बात तो सुनिए, एक second.
Charity should be beginning from your
Tariq
home.
Khan, there is a whole detailed Kovind committee report. Now you could make the case. I'm not arguing against it. You could make the case, for example, in Uttar Pradesh, next election is in 2027. So after that, if you're going to have one nation, one poll in 2029, then how do you convince political parties in Uttar Pradesh कि 2027 का जो चुनाव है, it's only for a term of 2 years, because 2 साल के बाद तो one nation, one poll है. Then you can make a case. I don't have a quibble with that. वो आपका argument है, genuine argument हो सकता है. But the point is to say कि मतलब 17 प्रदेश हैं जहाँ पे NDA का है, उसको पहले dissolve कर दो, and then बाकी जो 10 प्रदेश हैं या 12 प्रदेश हैं जहाँ के non NDA हैं, वहाँ पे बाद में करेंगे. See, that's not going to fly. The point is, you may have some genuine sort of grievances with the method that's been suggested by Mr. Kovind's panel. By all means, debate it in Parliament when the bill comes. But to say ki, dissolve all the NDA rule states and then don't dissolve all the non-NDA rule states, uska kya matlab hai? There's no meaning to it.
For me, mandate of the people is more important than money. If you want If you want mandate of the people, money will spend. And India is capable of spending money. Why you are shying away? We should spend money on election to have a free and fair election. So it's not like that that we'll say these type means this amount of and
Okay.
exactly is not clear that how much money is going to be saved. According to ex-CEC Quraishi ji, he said not more than 4,000 crore rupees could be saved. Means it's not a big amount.
Okay, so let me ask Professor Sanjay Kumar. You know, the economic cost, we've already debated, you know, the forcing of the government machinery to shift focus, particularly security forces, paramilitary forces, to shift their focus from what should be security duty to election duty. That's a election security duty. That, of course, is one part of it. There's also millions of man hours. Forget about the economic cost. There's man hour cost, which of course you can't quantify or you can't put that to the election budget. Policy paralysis. You heard Mr. Singh say that, you know, once the model code of conduct comes, then technically no government scheme or no government given this thing can be announced during the period of the model code. No significant policy can be announced, neither can it be executed. So the point is, there is an argument to be made other than even the economic rationale. That's one part of it. There is also a policy argument to be made that every 6 months, if you have model code of conduct from one state to the next, then you cannot implement a nationwide policy for the period that model code is in existence.
No, Zakka, the model code of conduct is implemented or comes into force only in the state which goes to poll. So suppose UP goes to poll, the model code of conduct will be implemented in UP. It will have no relevance in Bihar or in Madhya Pradesh. The government is elected for full 5 years, and the model code of conduct comes into play only for maybe 35 days, at the most 2 months. The government has 60 months to work for the people of this country, for the people of the state. But you can't take, the bahana of like model code of conduct has come into play for the last 2 months and we were not able to do the work. Suppose elections are held simultaneously for assembly and the Lok Sabha elections, and if they are being held separately as of now, so twice a state goes to poll, once for assembly election and once for the Lok Sabha election. Even if it falls in the cycle of 5 years, 2 months, 4 months goes for model code of conduct. Still government has enough time to work. So I personally don't buy this argument that there is always a model code of conduct which comes into play, which hampers government's developmental work. Government has all the time to do the developmental work. Model code of conduct is for a very, 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 very limited time.
No, the argument, for example, I think recently there was this scheme that was introduced for health insurance for senior citizens. Now, at that time, if I'm not mistaken, I think Haryana and Kashmir and other states were going to polls. So it could not be extended to those states. It could only be extended to those states once the election process got completed there. Is that something that you buy?
No, absolutely. If there is a central government scheme which has been implemented,
Yes,
which has been announced, and if a state goes to poll, that scheme will not be implemented in the state till the state elections are over. But I don't think the heaven will fall if suppose central government announce a program tomorrow and say next morning the election commission also announced the schedule for Delhi assembly election. If the scheme is not implemented in Delhi for the next 40 days, 45 days, the heaven will not fall. The scheme was not there for the last 5 years.
What about the argument, before I go back to the political spokespersons, what about the argument that from 1952, the first general election, till 1967, when we had the first big defeat to the Congress party, particularly in states, in big states, we had simultaneous elections for those first 15 years. So if you could do it in the first years after independence, surely we can do it 70 years after independence or 75 years after independence.
If the state cycle falls naturally in the cycle of a national election, nobody is saying that you don't hold elections simultaneously. But forcing all the states to hold elections simultaneously, that there is a difference. So when we are talking about 67, 72 and 57, states cycle of election, we are falling naturally in the national cycle of election. If it happens now, hold elections for 10, 12, 15 states along with the Lok Sabha elections. There's no harm in that. there's no point in holding elections months after months. So we should try and work in the model of holding elections of as many states as possible along with the Lok Sabha election, not forcing everyone, all the states mechanically to hold elections along with the Lok Sabha
So
election.
right
It is
now, the
impractical.
only two
It is
big
impractical.
states which have simultaneous elections for their assembly along with the Lok Sabha are Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. I think only two, at least amongst the big states. I'm not sure about the smaller states. But anyway, Mr. Singh, you know, the point that Professor Sanjay Kumar also made, ultimately, whether it is BJP ruled or non-BJP ruled, for example, UP goes to polls in 2027. How can you convince your own, you know, leaders and party members in UP that that election will only be for a 2-year term? Or Bengal goes to polls in 2026, Tamil Nadu goes to polls in 2026. That particular election will only be for a 3-year term. Why would any political party want to contest such an election?
Zakka, the parameter will be the same for each and every political party, not only for BJP or TMC or Congress party. It will be the same parameter for all the parties. But Professor Saab, it's not only the parliament election or the assembly election, it's the panchayat election, it's the civic bodies election. So all put together comes to something like 6 months, which is almost 10% of the working time. And then 10% is no less. And then if that energy is diverted toward progress of the nation, that will obviously increase the GDP of the country also and the state also. So it's not just merely 40 days or 2 months. When every election put together for a state, all elections, different elections put together, cost a lot of time and also a lot of resources also. But coming to the issue of how will this happen, that the report has to still come to the parliament and let the parliament discuss. And it will be, again, I reiterate, the parameters will be the same for all parties or all states put together.
No, so as per the former President Kovind committee report, so assemblies whose term ends between 2024 and 2029, like Uttar Pradesh in 2027, Punjab in 2027, if you have, for example, Tamil Nadu or Bengal in 2026, that election, that mid-year election will be for a truncated term. And then in 2029, you will have one nation, one poll across for all 29 states and all and the general election for the Lok Sabha in 2029. And then after that, it's a 5-year term. Now, again, the question that was asked by some of the opposition folks is, what if, for example, for some reason, a government falls, right? A government loses the confidence of the assembly and the government falls. Then what will you do for the remainder of the term? There will be no government in place for the next 2.5 years?
Well, Zakka, I have not gone through the report myself and neither I have the access to the report, but there will be some solution to this also, and then probably there will be some good viable solution to this. But the concern is, again, whatever will be implemented for all parties, all states with the same parameter. It won't be that some BJP will get benefit or TMC will not get benefit or some other NDA alliance partner will get benefit or the so-called India alliance, whatever left, will get benefit or not. So let's this be put on table and let's just be discussed. Why in haste? But why to reject it without even reading the report or without even understanding the report? So it would be good that let the parliamentarians discuss this and then make your opinion.
So Mohan Kumar Mangalam, again, we've made I gave the arguments for the economic rationale. The arguments have been made about this whole model code of conduct, not just for general elections or state assembly, but even local elections, impeding what Mr. Singh calls, development or, policy paralysis and so on and so forth. But be that, all there as those respective arguments, the fundamental point is also that for 15 years under the Congress rule, there were simultaneous elections. Nobody said Pandit Nehru is anti-federal because he had simultaneous elections. In fact, in 1983, the very first time the idea of one nation, one poll was mooted by the Election Commission, it was Mrs. Gandhi's government that was in power. Again, nobody called her anti-federal for coming up with the idea of one nation, one poll. The point is that this has been tried before in India. Now, you may or may not agree with the economic rationale of it, the policy rationale of it, but to say that it is anti-democratic, anti-federal, then the same can be applied to either Pandit Nehru or to Mrs. Gandhi.
India has changed rapidly over the last 70 years, Zakka. We were maybe only two parties back then when we attained independence. And for the longest time, it was the Congress and the Communists. And then came the Jan Sangh. And then you had many more parties. Now you have several parties, many of whom, as I said before, participate very actively in the assembly elections and the local body elections, but are sort of marginal factors in the parliamentary elections. So India today is not the India of the yesteryears. Number one. Number two, Zakka, I just have to say that this is just one nation, one election, one diversion that is being recycled again and again. It's recycled more than steel, frankly, the number of times that this idea and this diversion is being recycled. We all know what's going to happen. The bill will come, it will go straight to a JPC, where it will be debated once the JPC is formed. And I can guarantee you, today, you can't sort of undo what has been done. I agree, for 15 years, you had state and national elections happen at the same time. Show me one state government, even one that belongs to the BJP, that's willing to actually have an election for a truncated term. That would be unprecedented.
It will be.
I don't even know any one chief minister.
No, but
who say that
all BJP ruled states have said
years.
that they are willing to go ahead with one nation, one election.
If that is the case, then I'll have to point to what my SP spokesperson friend said, which is that if they are agreeing to go ahead, then maybe that is the solution, that first they do that. Because if you ask any of the regional parties who are in power, whether that be TMC, whether that be DMK, none of them will be agreed to a truncated term for their election. So I've already made my points on how the economic rationale or the policy rationale is really being overstated. This is a policy measure that really is not going to come to force. You can take it from me in writing.
No, so this again anti-federal argument, Tariq Khan. I mean, how can you say कि ये anti-federal है? No one is stopping Samajwadi Party, for example, from contesting national election today. For example, in the 18th Lok Sabha, you have more MPs from Uttar Pradesh than BJP does. तो nobody said कि मतलब समाजवादी पार्टी तो रीजनल पार्टी है, वो नेशनल इलेक्शन में कैसे उनको इतने सीट आ गए. And nobody is stopping a national party like BJP from contesting for regional elections. तो अगर ये simultaneously हो जाता है, as has been the case in the first 15 years after independence, and numerous elections. I think Karnataka for a long time used to have simultaneous elections. Now Andhra Pradesh and Odisha have simultaneous elections. उसमें कोई बुराई नहीं है. Regional parties can compete in national elections and national parties can compete in regional elections.
You have to show, the BJP or the committee have to show the positive point it has in its content. Means they are not able to convince even, means they have to convince the nation as well. Means suppose 1951 was the first election that it has been a simultaneous election for 15 or 17 years. Now you can realign those things in 2029, but that would get disturbed because majority in the assembly is important. Some state has a midterm poll. Suppose I state has a midterm poll, that alignment would get disturbed in 2035, 2045, 2055. That would get disturbed. Or you have to do some constitutional changes. By doing so, you have to say that the tenure of the assemblies or the would not be 5 years. That would be according to the mood of that assembly that it has been dissolved. Now there will be
tenure of the assembly is fixed. No one is saying that the tenure of the assembly will change. Tenure of the assembly is fixed.
Listen to me. The law commission in 2018 said that they would require 5 constitutional amendments. Article 83 need to be amended. Article 85 need to be amended. Article 172 need to be amended. Article 174 need to be amended. Article 356 need to be amended. What these articles says, they all talk about the powers, the tenure and all the things of the assembly and the parliament. If you want to amend it, you have majority, you can amend it. But there should be a constructive discussion on all the things, that what effect it will have.
Okay, final word, Professor Kumar. I have to wrap up after that. The point is, in an economy which is the 5th largest now in the world, fastest growing large economy, I think the BJP at a philosophical level is trying to say that the focus should be on the next 25 years. The focus should be till we get to 2047, Viksit Bharat and so on. That elections are actually time, money, energy, resources consuming, and we can afford to have one in 5 years as opposed to one every 6 months.
I think on this, there should be some concrete data about that, what amount of money would be saved if you hold elections simultaneously. Yes, there's no doubt that this money part, that expenses on election is going to be less. But instead of focusing too much on that, why don't we focus more on the kind of money which is being spent by the candidates and the political parties? If we are able to control that, if we are able to do something about that, we would be able to save a lot of money, resources of the country as well.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Let's see how this plays out. Thank you very much to all our guests. One Nation, One Poll. We're given to understand the bill will be taken up next week in Parliament, and then subsequently it could likely get referred to a joint parliamentary committee.